For days now, the U.S Iran conflict, which has spiraled into one of the most dangerous military confrontations in the Middle East in the recent years, as day after day we are looking at both sides that continue to trade strikes in the Strait of Hormuz, that remains the center of global concern. The United States, which has launched another wave of fresh military strikes against Iran for the 10th straight night, targeting capabilities that Washington believes that will be used to threaten commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Now let's put out what the Central Command has to say over these continuous strikes there. And these strikes, as President Trump has called, is a retribution. And of course, when it comes to the retaliation, where around the Gulf region, there are military bases, U.S. military bases there. Many of them have come under repeated attacks, and mainly we are looking at areas such as Bahrain, Kuwait, recently up until Iraq and also in Jordan, where there have been U.S. military casualties that have also been reported. So new round of strikes against Iran to further degrade its capabilities to attack ships in the Strait of Hormuz. That seems to be the update that is now coming in from the U.S. military. Let's connect with Ambassador Fabian joining us here on the broadcast. It's getting worse by the day, of course, when it comes to hitting Iran very hard, as what President Trump has vowed. He will punish Iran for the deaths of the 2 U.S. soldiers who have been killed.
Good morning. I'm afraid it's going to get worse before it gets better, primarily because President Trump was not sincere when he signed with such fanfare that 14-point memorandum of understanding, the Versailles Palace, so...
Ambassador Fabian, unfortunately, we can't hear you, having an audio trouble, but we'll just reconnect that line. But Iran seems to have also targeted sites in Bahrain, Jordan, and in Iraq, in Kuwait, and with President Pezeshkian saying that Iran is now fighting a full-scale war with the United States. And however, it is still unclear if the diplomatic messages are still being exchanged between the both sides through intermediaries, despite a collapse of the peace deal. Let's in the meantime also talk about the peace deal, because reports suggest that the mediators have proposed at least a 10-day ceasefire between Iran and the United States in this fresh effort to de-escalate the conflict and to revive diplomatic negotiations. Now the proposal conveyed to Tehran through intermediaries seek a temporary halt to military strikes to create a space for restoring an interim agreement that can be reached between Iran and the U.S. So Ambassador Fabian, I believe we can hear you now. Peace deal, is it now possible? I mean, what are we looking at? Because things still seem that we are back to square one.
I'll put it this way. It will be in the interest of Iran to agree to a temporary ceasefire. But at the same time, I'm afraid I have been witnessing a trend on the part of Iran to overplay its hands, especially by the IGRC. And so we cannot predict how Iran will react, because IGRC and some other elements in Iran honestly believe, rightly or wrongly, and I believe not exactly rightly and not exactly wrongly, that a prolonged conflict with the United States is in the interest of Iran, and that President Trump, because of the growing political opposition and the looming midterm elections in November, will be compelled to climb down. But, given President Trump's temperament, given his ability to fantasize, given his ability to disconnect himself with the reality, I do not know whether that calculation on the part of Iran will be correct.
All right, sir, because, Iran has already declared, as far as their supreme commander and their leader, saying that Trump's signature is worthless. And however, they have been saying that it is on the United States side that they have failed to live up to the promises that were made in this peace memorandum. Let's in the meantime also talk about what the mediators now have been suggesting. And of course, when we speak of the conflict that now seems to be spilling across the wider region, now comes the entry of Houthi rebels as well from Yemen. They seem to have announced a maritime blockade targeting Saudi Arabia, raising fresh fears of disruption at the Red Sea shipping and a broader regional escalation. Now, this move comes days after a reported Saudi strike on Sana'a airport, with the Houthis now calling for nationwide mobilization and warning supporters to be prepared for any confrontation. So what are we now looking at, Ambassador Fabian? I mean, this seems to be a conflict that is now gaining a lot of scope to become, even wider in the region? We already have the Strait of Hormuz blocked. Now, is a similar threat coming in from the Red Sea too?
Well, very technically, the Houthi threat is only against Saudi Arabia. And as we know, Saudi Arabia exports about 4 million barrels of oil a day through that choke point. And that is mainly to Asia. Now, it is quite likely that the oil prices will shoot up. And that is very bad for all of us, including for India. Now, the Houthis, it has been reported that before striking at Sana'a, MBS had telephoned President Trump and I suppose got his consent. In other words, President Trump wanted this to escalate. Now, if President Trump wants to escalate, and it has been also reported that he is escalating for the sake of de-escalating later. Now, I tell you, it's a very dangerous policy because war is not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. What the enemy will do also has to be calculated. Yes. President Trump has been playing poker and to disastrous consequences.
And now there comes, Yemen's Houthis who have announced this maritime embargo against Saudi Arabia because, in fact, this is backed, the militia which is backed by Iran and saying that it will immediately begin and was in retaliation for a Saudi blockade of ports and airports and Houthi-controlled northwestern Yemen as well. Ambassador Fabian, appreciate you joining us here on the broadcast. Thank you very much for your point of view. But in the meantime, let's also get you updates because the conflict which intensifies in and around the Strait of Hormuz, the human cost is also mounting. Hundreds of Indian seafarers that remain caught in one of the world's most volatile maritime corridors, with commercial shipping facing growing security risk. And amid the rising concerns for their safety, our news editor for Foreign Affairs, Akansha Swaru, spoke with the Director General of Maritime Administration and Additional Secretary to the Government of India, Shyam Jagannathan, and on the very government's response and the efforts that is going to be made to safeguard Indian seafarers.
All right, joining us on Times Now is Senior IAS Shri Shyam Jagannathan, who's currently serving as the Director General of Maritime Administration. He's also the Additional Secretary to the Government of India. Many thanks to you, Mr. Jagannathan, for joining in on Times Now and for taking out your precious time. Let's begin with our focus on Indian seafarers. How many Indian seafarers and Indian-flagged vessels are currently in the Persian Gulf and in the Strait of Hormuz region? What is the DGMA's real-time assessment of their safety at the moment?
Firstly, as of the 19th of July, 1800 hours, we have a total of 6 Indian flagged vessels which are in the Strait of Hormuz. And this is west of Strait of Hormuz, of which there are a total of 125 Indian seafarers on board. 6 of these vessels have been trading in the Persian Gulf region, whereas 2 of the vessels are awaiting a transit. There are other vessels which are trading east of the Strait of Hormuz. And the security assessment, as you're aware, presently the transits are not happening. In fact, certain vessels have been hit in the morning today, 3 specific tankers where there is Indian crew on board. And the security situation is highly dynamic. The Director General of Maritime Administration has issued an advisory of a high state of alert and also advising that unless completely unavoidable, sign-ons to vessels which are in the Persian Gulf to be refrained from. Although this is not a blanket ban, as crew changes and transit in whichever manner, giving priority to the security and safety of the seafarers on board is admissible, is what we are advocating.
Mr. Jagannathan, since it's a fluid situation and you mentioned the latest attack on these tankers, could you share more information about the number of Indian crew members that are on these vessels? Any information with regards to their safety?
Presently, we are coordinating with the Indian naval authorities and also with the MRCC Oman for these three specific vessels. And I will be able to only give specific detail on these vessels subsequent to the rescue and relief operations. As of now, our primary information is the efforts for rescue and for relief operations around to secure the safety of the seafarers. And the vessels have been critically damaged, and the only light at the end of the tunnel is there have been no reported casualties as of now. Although this remains a highly dynamic situation, and I will be constrained to give any further information thereof.
Mr. Jagannathan, there's also a lot of confusion with regards to the figures surrounding the number of Indian seafarers who've died in the attacks and versus the number that's missing. Could you, for the benefit of our viewers, also shed more light on that?
Ma'am, the total compilation of the reported cases as of now is of a total of 10 fatalities with one presumed death, which are on multiple incidents starting from the 1st of March onwards till the latest being the 14th of July.
Has DGMA activated any dedicated 24/7 monitoring or assistance cell for families of seafarers? How can seafarers and families reach the DGMA for urgent help?
Ma'am, I'm grateful for this question. The DGMA has a 24/7 grievance redressal portal. Through the channel, I would seek to put out the numbers. The domestic toll-free helpline is 1-800-889-7768. The international toll-free helpline based in the US is +1-888-988-0256. We have 24/7 WhatsApp support on an Indian number +91-8655-856830. There's a dedicated email, enavik.24x7@gov.in. We have also done extensive outreach on the social media and on individual mass messages to the seafarers, as the DGMA has their credentials in terms of email and mobile numbers for any matter. There are two specific officials who are to be contacted in case of extreme emergency. One is the Deputy Director General Casualty, who is Captain Harinder Singh. And these I would request, when we pass it on to you, if you can kindly give it whatever publicity is possible from your channel, please.
Right.
Heading into a short break, you're watching Times Now.